All right, hello, rockers, rollers, and metal maniacs. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am absolutely thrilled, beside myself with excitement today. I am chatting with a legend in the rock and roll heavy metal world, the consummate Mr. Carl Canedy, of course, legendary drummer and producer, and from the Rods. Solo project Canedy, among many other amazing projects. Hello, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that kind introduction. I feel like I should just leave now because I'll just go downhill from here.
No, no, not at all, not at all. What's been going on with you with musically as of late? I know the Rods put out an amazing live album not too long ago, earlier this year, the live at the Rose Hall, which is an incredibly wonderful album. And yeah, what else is happening? What do you got going on right now?
Well, thanks. When it came to that album, that was the first job with Freddie, our new bass player.
Yeah,
And I wanted to, the guys didn't know. They didn't know we were shooting any video. They didn't know we were recording it. And but I wanted to kind of document, like I think it was important for the fans to see that the band is alive and well.
yeah,
And after COVID, coming back stronger than ever. So it was a good, I mean, it had little bumps, but I'm like, let's leave them all in. Let's not worry about it. Let's just put it out. It's warts and all. And I'm really glad we did. And Freddie is working out incredibly well. And he's, become a brother and part of the team. And we're all really happy. So it's been good. On the other hand, we are just finishing the new Rods album. And I can't announce what label. And I can't announce the title as yet, but the label is close to doing their own announcement. And then we can all chat about it. But really
nice.
excited. This is, every band, the album, the newest album that's the best album we've ever recorded. And, so I mean, I when I hear that, I go, yeah, I know, because it's the freshest, the newest. You like playing it the most. But, I have to say, those are the best album we've probably done since the last one. So, but whatever that means, I think this is a really good follow up to Brotherhood of Metal.
Nice.
And it's a great addition to our catalog. But I do think it's a killer album, and we have some really strong tracks on it. And with Freddie's bass, which is a really deep, powerful Geezer Butler style, Bob Daisley kind of playing, it's really, he and I have played together on albums and played live as guest artists for other bands.
Hmm.
And we clicked from day one. So we were tight, knowing that him joining the Rods was a non-issue when it came to rhythm section. But it's awesome to hear what he's contributed to the band. We've not had that before. And as great as Gary was, and wonderful performer, singer, and killer bass player, great bass player, it's a different thing. Freddie and I are very in sync. So we play off each other and we work together and we work out parts and we have ideas that we bounce off each other and develop.
Nice.
So can't be happier about that. So that I'm really excited about the new album. We just shot 3-song video at the L in Elmira, New York, and we got to use our digital backdrop, which was, I don't know, that was probably more fun for me than shooting the video, just seeing our digital backdrop up there.
Nice.
But because the digital backdrops, some of them are static, but some of them move, and ours moves and morphs, and so I was like, oh, this is cool to watch. And so that's what we're doing. We've got we're hoping to do some dates in 24, and we're going to still have a couple more dates. We have Blues on the Bridge coming up in Binghamton, New York,
Oh,
and a couple of others in the work, tentative. So excited about that. It's been a pleasure to play live. After COVID,
yeah.
I don't know if it was for every artist, but it was a breath of fresh air to be able to go back out and play after COVID. And then when it was going so well, like now when we're going to a gig, I'm just can't wait. Can't wait to get on stage. So it's a nice feeling after COVID, because at some point in COVID, you're like, oh, am I ever going to be able to go back out on stage? Am I going to be comfortable? Am I going to go out and hack? Which is one of my biggest fears. And that was when we first reformed the Rods, was I didn't want to become a reasonable facsimile of the band we once were.
Yeah.
And that was, those fears were alleviated immediately once we fired up. But then you have to sustain that. You have to sustain that power, that energy. And that's not always easy. So anyway, it's worked well and it's going well. And I'm just hoping it continues for the near future.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to hear the new album. Very excited about that. And I'll admit, as a fan, I was a little shocked, back in I guess it was 2019, so before COVID, when Gary retired from music, and like, oh God, what's going to happen to the Rods now? But when I heard, when I read the news later, I guess it was last year, when Freddie had joined, I was very excited because he played, as with Quiet Riot and Dee Snider's band, and
Right.
yeah, great bass player.
He's the real deal,
Yeah,
so it was a great fit.
yeah, really high energy, and I love the fact that you stated like that you two gel really well together and play off of
Yeah.
each other really well, and I think that's very apparent in the Rose Hall live album. I mean, yeah, it's, you guys are tight, you
Yeah.
sound fresh and young and energetic, and it's a sonic
And then
powerhouse.
that's, thank you for that. I'm glad you noticed that. I appreciate that. I think, and that's a year ago, a little over a year ago now, we recorded that. And that is, we are now like down the road from that and tighter and more parts worked out. And it just keeps developing. And so and I think it was important too, that we had to have some kind of, we were never going to have that crazy, as I used to call it, the dog and pony show with Gary and David. I think when my daughter was little, she said it was, what did she say? She saw a video of us at the Palladium or something, or Beacon Theater. And she saw Gary and Dave with crazy hair running around, both of them, and me with my hair going crazy on the drums. And she was little, and she said it was looked like two mops and an ape. It was like the best possible description,
Yeah, it's
because
great.
it's like for little kids, that's how they see things,
Yeah,
and that's what it reminded her of. It's like a cartoon for her, and for us, to go back to, that was the biggest fear too, was how could we go back out, because David and Gary, such a signature style, the way they perform together,
yeah,
and so this has just been, I can't say enough. And we were really sorry that Gary didn't come back. We waited a year and a half, and eventually wrote and said, I really gave it a lot of thought, and I just don't think I have anything more to give. Now he still plays locally. He still is great as ever. Plays the occasional gigs and whatnot, but I think the intensity of the Rods, it's an intense thing. Like I used to describe this as, people would say, well, what's it like? Your show like? And I said, well, it's like a train kind of leaves the station and it doesn't stop until it gets to its destination. In between there, it's on 10. The train's rolling down the tracks,
yeah.
period. And it's an intense thing to go through. You got that whole hour and 15 minutes where there's no let up.
Yeah. That's a great description of it. I think of the Rods, the live, I think doing anything live, it's you look at, for those that haven't seen you live, go on YouTube and you look at the early days, and then also I know somebody had posted, and I think I don't know if it was an amateur video or it was the Psycho Fest in Vegas, like I don't know, 2017, 2018, around there, and you guys do not stop at all. I mean, it's just
No.
fire. It's and just
And
a joy to watch.
I know people have likened us to a punk band for the energy, and that's
Yeah,
probably a good description. It's just we're 100%. We joke about the fact that it's not, we don't count it off 1, 2, 3. We just say ready, set, go.
yeah, yeah.
It's like waiting for the green flag at the racetrack.
Yeah, it's for me it's reminiscent, your stage presence, your stage energy, it's reminiscent to Raven, classic English band Raven. Yeah, same thing. You guys just, and they, to this day are just on the move the entire
They
time.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're brothers, and the new album, if you haven't heard it and
Oh
you're
yeah.
listening to this, go get the new album, because like I told John, his vocals have never been better. And with them, and now I can't think of his name, the drummer, who's phenomenal. And like it's just an infusion of energy, and it's taken the band to a different level. And
Yeah.
the album is phenomenal. But he's a great drummer, and he adds so much. And our tour manager, Patty, she said that someone asked her, "What's it like with Freddie in the band?" And she said, and at first I was like, "Oh man," I kind of hurt a little bit, but then I was like hysterical about it. I thought it was really funny. But she said, You know, when you have a house with two old cats and they just kind of lie around and whatever, and then you bring in a kitten, and suddenly all the cats are going crazy. Everybody, you know, they're moving, and she said it's like that. I was like, well, that's a great analogy, really is, because it just totally energized us.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, and you know, you and Dave are I mean, just amazing musicians, you know, in yourselves. But I mean, yeah, the fact that I love the fact that you're you know, kind of, you feel revitalized. You've got this, you know, younger bass player, and that you mesh so well together. So again, I'm incredibly excited to hear the new album. Cannot wait for the announcement to come out about that. Um,
And I think that's a good point. That I think it's not like we played for ourselves entirely with disregard for uh, the music. But right now we're all playing for the song, even though we're still adding the crazy. But we're all like trying to make that song as powerful and as energetic and as exciting as possible. And we're all, three of us have come together to make that happen. That's never really happened before. We kind of threw our parts at each other and we just hit the stage on a run. And it's not like that anymore. And it's a much more intense scenario, I think.
Interesting.
So I'm, yeah, very happy about it.
What
And the Raven album is killer, so go buy that.
yeah,
And there's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
be a new Anvil album coming out soon.
Oh,
That'll be
cool.
killer too.
Yeah, yeah, great band. Um, Based on what you just said, I was curious about the you know, with especially with this new album. What's the writing process like for you guys? You know, how does that work now?
In the past, I would write a certain number of songs because, and people don't, you know, they don't know that I play guitar, or they don't think I, you know, whatever, they don't know. I noticed when I put out my first solo album, suddenly people are like, oh, I put my demos on it, which I call them my 30-minute demos, where I play, sing, you know, write, arrange, everything, perform it all. And like, oh, that's you doing everything. I'm like, yeah, like, what were you thinking how I brought in when it says written by Carl Canedy? That I just like went, na 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 na, na, you know. But so anyway, that's how we were doing it up until Brotherhood of Metal, where I was just very busy and just hadn't picked up my guitar. So Brotherhood of Metal, I think I wrote 1982, which I wanted to chronicle the band,
Hmm.
and and then um, and then I sent David the lyrics for Brotherhood of Metal, which you know we put together beautifully. So on this album, there are some songs I've sent a couple of sets of lyrics to him, and the one is the title track, and it's a killer tune. So really, on this album, I've been contributing some, like a little idea here and there, and then sending a couple songs lyrically that David, you know, takes apart and reassembles incredibly well. And the rest are David's songs, and I think he was on a streak. You'd call every few days, got another one. And he was on just a kick of just prolific writing, and these songs are holding up, and they are really, I think they're really good. Like every band says, this is one of the best albums we've done. So I'm gonna say that again. But it is some really great songwriting, and it's majority of the music and the lyrics are David.
Nice, nice. Do you with the writing? So with I was curious with your writing, and I don't know if it's the same with David. Do you? It sort of sounds like, and maybe I misheard you here. It sounds like you start with lyrics, or do you start with a riff?
It all depends, you know, depending on David, depending on me. Sometimes I'll have a lyric idea. In the two songs that I sent David on the album, they were lyric ideas, and then he wrote the song based on the lyric ideas. Just like with Brotherhood of Metal, I sent him the Brotherhood of Metal lyrics, and then he wrote the song from that. But a lot of times you have a riff. Um, like Metal Will Never Die. We were out on the golf course, and he was singing me Metal Will Never Die, the riff. I'm like, damn, that is a killer riff. And you know, then we went and recorded it, and you know, it was the lyric. The lyrics, I think, when we first started, it was "Rock Will Never Die," and I'm like, no, it can't be "Rock Will Never Die." Like, I changed it to "Metal," and you know, it just kind of morphed. And that was a really amazing session because everything we did very quickly. And when it came to the guitar solo, we played the one take guitar solo. Computer crashed, but it saved the guitar solo.
Oh,
So we're like, that's meant to be.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. I love the fact that I don't know, as a fan, it's always amazing to hear those stories of, yeah, like a riff, some iconic song, and it started, on a golf course with, one guy singing the harmony to the other guy, or the riff to the, like it's just a beautiful story. I love the fact that these things just kind of happen, and it's very organic. I love hearing
Yeah.
that. I think it's fun, because
I think,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes you get this, kind of romanticism about what writing music is like. And it's, like, you think of, like Mozart or somebody, like toiling away in his, on his piano for hours and hours and hours. And then, you hear a story like, oh yeah, we're on the golf course. And yeah, just this riff
No,
pops in my head.
we have toiled away for hours and hours on a three chord song. And we've struggled with that for hours. It's only three chords, but it took forever. But we've been together for 44 years.
Wow.
David and I working together. And so for us, there's that thing, and I hate, I hate when all the buzz phrases, the catchphrases, but there is a little intuitive thing. David and I have worked together. We can read each other. I'll stop and I'll say, instead of questioning, if I say, let's try this here or this, or he says the same thing, we don't question each other. We try it. We learned a long time ago. We used to have a rule that if somebody came in with an idea, you couldn't say anything about it until you learned it completely and could perform it perfectly. At that point, if you had an idea to modify it, then you could say something. But I've seen it so many times with musicians. When I produce and they have an idea and they're working, and they'll start to play a riff, and so I go, oh wait, go to the B flat there, and like you haven't even heard the whole riff,
Yeah.
and it just destroys the flow. So we learned a long time ago that, and we also have a saying in the rods that I think has served us well. If it's more than three chords, it takes longer than 5 minutes to learn, it's not a good rod song. So we keep it simple.
Nice. And it's worked. It worked beautifully for,
it's not quite that simple, but we try not to overthink it, and we know what we are live and what we try to write for that, because we've tried in other ways to expand, and we're a three-piece band. So if you're going to try to do things that need an orchestra live, it's going to fall flat. So, and it's not what the fans want to hear. So we keep it true to the band. But anyway, over the years, we have written together in a room. We have written individually. I've brought in songs completely done. David has brought in songs completely done. David has written drum parts for me.
Oh, interesting.
Like he'll say, because David, first of all, in the rods, David and Gary were both drummers. They both started as drummers. They can both play drums well. So so David would come in and he would say, this is the drum beat, this is what I want. And when he writes, he leaves all these spaces for drum fills, more than I do in my songs for myself. And but he also he'll have an idea, and he doesn't have them very often, but when he does, I listen and I execute them, because they're good ideas. So it's it's a good collaboration in that regard. And there was a time when, and now Freddie started as a drummer as well. So once again, Here I am. But we had, in our road crew, we had 5 in our road crew, 3 in the band, and everybody was a drummer or had been a drummer. And I used to make jokes about, I have to be really careful going down steps because I could be replaced by any of these guys.
Yeah, that's true. That's great. I love the fact that that you all are multi-instrumental, and I would imagine that especially with the writing process. I mean, like you all bring so much to the room, because you all understand each other's instruments. That's great. I didn't know that. That's really fascinating. I think that's really cool. And I think that comes across in the music in a lot of ways. I mean, the fact that you guys, and probably why you gel so well together, as musicians, that's really cool. That's really interesting.
It keeps the musical vocabulary high. It helps.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's happening with your solo stuff? Are you, Warrior was what a phenomenal album that was.
Thank you so much. I'm proud of that album.
Yeah, that's like, for, in simple terms, I think, that is just Thriller, no filler. That album just rocks from the first note to that last note. Like every song is fire. I adore that album. I just incredible musicianship on that album, and a great band you put together there as well. And do you have intention to do another follow-up to that, to the Warrior album, or are you kind of more focused right now on the Rods?
Well, I am focused on the Rods, but I'm also I think we're on a seventh song for a new project, which I may or may not call Canedy. I can't say too much about it because we have somebody who's high profile involved, but I'm not quite ready to announce that. But the commitment is there. It's just a question of further along. But we do have 6 of them written, and I just have to add my drum tracks. I still have 3 drum tracks for the Rods, which I'll hopefully knock out this week. And then I'll finish those. But so I have a new project that is pretty killer. I'm again, best thing I've done since the last album. But it's I want to say it's along the lines of Warrior in the sense that Mike Santosiero is the singer, and who was the singer on the Canedy album. So Mike is in this project, and John Hahn is playing guitar, and John Hahn played with Harpo. He was a Leviathan, Varney Discovery, and he's with I'm trying to think. I played on his last album, but he's a guitar virtuoso, and it's really good. I mean, I'm happy with it. It's a little different. It's a little more, it's heavy and a little more prog.
Oh, interesting.
So,
yeah. Oh, I'm excited to hear that. That sounds really cool. And Mike, vocally, that guy's a monster.
He's a monster. And the other thing about him is he doesn't have LSD, which is really good because so many times singers have the LSD thing, lead singer disease. And he doesn't have that at all. He's really intelligent, easy to work with guy, and always keeps a cool head. Looks at the big picture, nothing, no drama. So just really wonderful to work with.
Yeah, and I love his range and also just his cadence. The way he changes kind of how he sings on each song, and it really fits the song. For instance, I'm so bad with titles, I apologize. I think is it Hellfire? Is that the name of the song on Warrior?
Hellride.
Hellride. Thank you. Sorry. That he it's almost like he's channeling Mark from Accept a little bit in that song. I mean, he doesn't, it's not exactly, but it's similar, like that similar kind of vibe. And I really love that song a lot, as well as the title track Warrior, I think is fantastic too. But it's such a solid album. It's just like,
thank you so much. Mark's phenomenal. And I'm so like, what a addition to Accept. I mean, Mark should have been a superstar decades ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that he is getting the recognition he's deserved forever, since I worked with him on TT Quick, first EP.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've worked with him. So yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And Mark came from his home in New Jersey twice to sing on my solo album.
Wow.
Wouldn't take any money, wouldn't really? Just such a good guy. Yeah. I mean, he came to work in my crappy little, one room studio. Like he just didn't care. Very humble and just cranked it out. Great job.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I've heard that I've never met him, but I've heard he's a wonderfully kind and generous person.
He is a really down to earth guy. And like I said, he really, if anybody deserves it, he does.
Yeah. Great live performer too. Man, he's was like incredible live. I think very fitting replacement of Udo.
I agree. I think it helped elevate the band to the status where they once were.
Yeah, definitely. That's I agree. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit, and I did maybe take a ride on the Wayback Machine. And Dr. Peabody's Wayback Machine.
That's right.
So tell me about I'm really curious about your start in music. Did you grow up in a musical family? Like how did that start? What was the impetus for you to start playing music?
Wow, interesting question. Very interesting, especially in light of um, I had just finishing. I'm doing my second edit myself, my second read through of my book, my
Oh,
memoirs,
cool.
and uh, and of course the shameless plug is it's all in there. So once you buy my book, these answers will be revealed.
Ah,
So
yes.
no, when I was nobody was musical in my immediate family.
Hmm.
When I was 4.5, I wanted to play drums. My mother took me to an American Legion in Waverly, New York, or Sarah, PA. I can't remember exactly where. They're close to each other. And there was a tank in front of the American Legion, and I was like, "Wow, that's cool! Like a big tank." When you're little, you just look at that as the cool machine. You don't realize it's a war machine; it's a killing machine. But you look
Right.
at it as, "Wow, I want to play. Let me climb that." And then we went inside, and there was, and there still are. I think I see them periodically. A very low stage, and it has that wrought iron where a little gate opening, and then the rest of it's wrought iron. And in the middle was this red drum set, and it was like the Alleluia singers, and the white light shone down on the stage. And from that day on, I have been obsessed with drums. I didn't
Wow.
even know really what playing drums was about. I had no clue. But I just was, I want drums. I want to play drums. I didn't even see him play the drums. I just saw the drums.
Wow.
So, and it's funny because it was a red kit, and I've never owned a red kit. I saw Dave Clark when I was young, Dave Clark on Ed Sullivan, and it just seemed cheesy, so I never bought a red drum set. Um, so, plus also we were very poor. I didn't get drums till I was 13. It was just my mother. My father had died young, and they had divorced early, and so my mother was a single mom. We had no cash, and so when I did get a drum set, I started buying. I saw Blue Cheer on Dick Clark, kind of blew up our little black and white TV doing summertime blues. But I went out and I bought another bass drum within 6 months, I think, of getting my drum set at 13.
Wow.
And so it was cheap, and I still have them. They're a Ludwig, and then so I would buy these pieces of blue sparkle Ludwig, and I have three snare because I was buying them on eBay. Just I buy a snare drum periodically because I never had one, a blue sparkle to match the set. And then a couple of years later, without remembering I had purchased one, I buy another one. I did that 3 times, so now I have three blue sparkle snare drums that I just acquired without even knowing I had the other one, two. So, but little by little, I bought these pieces of drums when I could afford them, and they were more affordable now. Now those Ludwig drums are expensive, but
Oh
the
yeah.
vintage drums. But so, yeah, two bass drums, two floor toms. I think I have 5 or 6 mounted toms, three snare drums, and they're stacked to the ceiling. And then I have some on the floor because more than enough to stack on the ceiling. But that's how that was it. So really, nobody in the family musical that I was aware of, and I had no idea what the drums were about. I just knew that I wanted to play them.
That's
So
really cool. That's really cool.
maybe it was just an instinct for hitting things. I don't know.
I love that. That's great. That's a great story. I also love that. Just kind of circle back, just as a side note. I think it's a. I mean, wouldn't you love to be able to, you know, tell that 13-year-old Carl that, hey, this, Blue Cheer you're watching on on television. I produced that. I produced them
Hmm.
years later. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, you
Hmm.
produced Blue Cheer. That's so
Blue
cool.
Cheer was legendary for me, and I love the guys, and we all got along so well. And I went to visit Dickie out in California when I was doing the Possessed album, and Dickie was wonderful. And my friend Duck McDonald, who played on the Thrasher album and co-wrote the album and produced it with me, he wound up managing and performing in Blue Cheer right up until Dickie's demise, and so it was really just like you said, a full circle, and it was so cool to be working with them and to see them. Paul, the drummer, who had such great parts, but he didn't always know what he was playing. He just would instinctively write these parts.
Hmm. Wow.
Sorry, all my talking is drying out my mouth.
Oh yeah.
Um, but like a couple times in the process, he would just have his head down on the drums, like Paul, overthinking it. you're legendary. You play great parts. You were inspirational to me and a million other drummers by playing what you feel as opposed to trying to overthink it. You've got what so many people want, and that's a style and originality. Just go with it. That's all you need to do. Just sit down and play what you feel from the heart, and it'll be great. And it was interesting to be able for me to go from this little kid watching him rip up the drums, big cymbals up high, playing so hard, and to then producing him and then trying to help him get a performance that
Yeah.
he was happy with. And I realized later on, like because of him, I broke cymbals that were very expensive. And back then they were like 100. I was paying $100 a cymbal, but $100, like the $300 or more now for a cymbal. And I broke so many cymbals, cracked them because I didn't know technique. I didn't learn that until I studied with Carmine Appice. But up until then, I was just slamming the drums. And I broke so many drumsticks, and the drumsticks were expensive then. Like now I have an endorsement with Vic Firth, or now I have an endorsement with ProMark.
Oh, okay.
But, I also had a Vic Firth endorsement for 30 years. And, so you're getting them at a dirt cheap price, affordable. But they weren't affordable because you go into a music store, they're charging you basically retail. And I broke so many sticks, I thought later I should have given him a bill. Like,
Yeah.
you owe me, man.
Yeah.
Because of you, I spent thousands of dollars trashing drumsticks and cymbals.
Right.
But anyway, it was cool to work with them.
That is cool. That's really cool. So I guess that begs the question, how did you, so obviously, you and David started the Rods in was 79, 80 around that time.
79.
And then I guess it would have been like 5 or 6 years later, you started doing production. You started producing bands. How did that happen? When did you, were you always interested in production, or, kind of
Always.
Okay.
No, always. And, girlfriends who went to Elmira College, my one friend, and that was actually the first place I ever recorded, which was another interesting thing that Kim Simmons, the first song I ever recorded was I'm Tired by Savoy Brown. And years later, Kim Simmons lived at my house for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And so, it was a really cool thing for me to just meet somebody. First song I'd ever recorded. But through Elmira College, we did our first studio recording, which I still have. It's actually on YouTube if anybody's interested. It's called Wadsworth Anthem. So I'll say it again because it's a goofy name. It was a psychedelic name. So if you think of it in that light, just think of yourself with a black light poster and some kind of spinning wheel that's all black light, and say the word Wadsworth Anthem. It's very psychedelic, and it would make sense then.
Yeah.
Because now today, Wadsworth Anthem, it's like, what the hell is that? But that's what it was. It was my psychedelic band idea. But they were able, the ladies who went to college there were able to sign out recorders. So the two of them signed out 2 mono recorders for me. And then I would play one of the worst songs ever written into one, strumming my acoustic guitar. And then I would either bang out a stupid piano part to the other, playing the one recorder. As you can imagine how bad this sounds. Just imagine playing back when there was a boombox, playing your boombox and then recording it with a crappy mic while you're adding some part to it. So, and I would do this back and forth until the hiss was so loud from the recording. It was so bad. But when I think back on it, I think that was probably a good thing, because the more the hiss piled up, the less you could hear the worst song ever written. So I was into it from day one. I was, maybe at that time I was 15, 16. And but I was always interested. So every time we go to the studio, I'd learn everything I could, and that was it. I was just always into it. And then when we got to doing the Rods album, we did the Colossus album, which again, I have to say, Colossus album is a band from 1970. I met them in 1975, I think, in Massachusetts, 74, 75. And eventually we moved to New Jersey, and there we were, a rock band moving to New Jersey in the height of the disco era. It was, just perfect timing. And then we moved to upstate New York because those were my roots. And I had worked with Valix Agency with Alex Perialis, his father, John Perialis, and his mother, Doris. at Valak. So we moved up here and they were booking us, and so we were able to make a living and build a following. But we now have a brand new album coming out, and I'm sure people will start to hear of it because we have a record deal with Deco, and there's going to be some good promotion and whatnot. So, and it's a cool album, and I always refer to it, and not disparagingly, but I do say it kind of, it's like a poor man's Hall and Oates is how I try to describe it. But it's very, very good. That's not to say it's not good. I think it's really good. And there's a song that I'm singing on it, which will be the second single from the album, which is something that Lincoln wrote, and he spent 6 months convincing me to sing it because my answer was always, "Come on, you got to do it. I'll send you a piece. Just try it. Do this, do this." And the answer was always an emphatic "No way."
Nice, nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
But yep. So anyway, I was going somewhere else with this story, and I went way off. And I'm sorry, I forgot what the train of thought was.
No, it's fascinating. It's really interesting. I love it.
Getting into production.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into production. Then we wound up doing the Colossus album, which was, we were trying to make Sergeant Pepper, our first album. I had 2 songs on there. One was How Did You Get So Crazy? I had a whole string section, our string quartet come in, and yeah. So, and then I had another song, All You Need Is a Ticket, and I had brass section for that. We used David Kent, who was the keyboard player from Hall & Oates, which is not where I got the idea to describe the music as poor man's Hall & Oates. But David Kent, there were a number of people who performed. There were a lot of guest artists on the album, and it was a good and bad experience because instead of doing one thing well, we did 10 songs pretty well, and nothing cohesive. But that was my first taste of production, watching and also producing my own stuff. So when we got to the rods, David and I produced the rods because we didn't have any money to do anything as a producer or hire a producer. So then after that, I did some demos for bands, and they were turning out well. And so then I decided that maybe I'd throw my hat into the ring for that. And I became friends with Johnny Z just as he was starting, and he gave me a shot with Anthrax.
Yeah. I was gonna say you produced some classic metal albums. Some of my favorite, album, Anthrax, Armed and Dangerous, and Spreading the Disease, and you mentioned
Fistful of Metal.
Yeah, Fistful of Metal, and you mentioned Possessed, Beyond the Gates, and what Exciter, yeah, just
Great guys.
Yeah.
And how about Jeff? Like, what a tough guy he is, man. He's out there performing and killing it, and he's great. I loved working with him to begin with. He and I got along well in the studio, and I really focused on Jeff, and I was really glad. I know we took some flack initially, but that was it. Really, in the long run, it's turned out to be proven that it was a really good album. They did a great job on that. Yeah. And they did it on Easter vacation. They were all in high school.
Really?
Yeah. We did pre-production at Debbie Abono's, rest her soul. She was a wonderful lady who managed them. We did it at her house in California after school.
Wow.
And then when we got to spring break or Easter break, we were in Cotati near San Francisco and recording.
That's wild. I never knew that. That's really wild. That is crazy. Do you still, I mean, obviously, you produce Rod's albums and your own work. Are you still producing other bands?
Sorry, just had a call come in. So I produced our album, and
I mean, I know you've continued to produce the Rod's albums and your solo work. Are you still producing other bands? Do you still
I do. I produced a band, Black Tie Stereo, which I think they're called Black Tie Stereo. They mutated their name. But anyway, I produced a young band, very talented, local band. And then I just produced right before Christmas, Adam and the Metal Hawks, their Christmas song, which is really a great Christmas song, destined to be a classic. If you get a chance to listen to it, it's a killer song. So, I just produced them. It was really a wonderful time because they're so talented, and they've done a lot of dates with us. I went to New York it was right after Christmas, meant to be before, but there was some issue, and so we wound up right after sitting in with them on that Christmas song. But it was at the Iridium, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a great experience working with them because they are truly the real deal. They're a young band. I think Johnny, the guitarist, is 19. He's a huge fan of Eddie Van Halen, and man, is he a wicked guitarist. But they're all great writers, and three of them sing. And I actually had never done this before, but I was listening to them for the harmonies, and they sang so well together. Instead of miking them individually so I could control it in the mix, I put them around a microphone, and then I would balance them, move back a little bit here, move this to the right a little bit, um, until I got a perfect blend, and I recorded them that way. That's
Oh,
how
nice.
good they are. When
Cool.
you hear when you hear the vocals, there's no doctoring, there's no pitch correction, there's nothing. That's them singing it, and they do it live. Phenomenal. They did a version of Burn, which I would love to produce. They opened for us a few weeks ago in Syracuse, and they did Burn, and they just kicked ass on it.
Cool.
So not any if you're not familiar with it, listen to Burn, but Burn if you know it, it's really it's a killer tune to play. Not it's not for the weak or the faint of heart.
Yeah, you're speaking of Deep Purple's Burn, right?
Deep Purple's Burn. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those harmonies in that song. I mean, Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. Whew, man, really, that can't be easy to sing. That's really cool. I need to hear this. That sounds great. That sounds very cool.
But yeah, check out the. I always forget the title of the song. It's a cool song, cool video too. They did a great video.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. That sounds cool. I'd love to hear
But
them.
the problem with producing these days is there's just no money. It's time consuming. It's no money, and most people, if they're at a certain level, they can record at home. There's so many plugins and so easy. So the days of going to the studio, the budgets are gone, and nobody has the time really. So there's nothing that I've been asked to do some local things, but I tend to shy away from them because it's time consuming, and at the end of the day, I'm not sure that the band or myself we walk away thinking, yeah, this was really great. It's hard to a lot of times with young bands, you're playing catch up and teaching them, so it's like Acme School of recording, and it's happening while you're recording, and then so you get done, and now they've learned, and so the next album they're going to be really prepared. But that first album, it's a little pearls before swine. They don't quite recognize what's happening until after the fact, and maybe never. But so I just find it's a little easier. I'm just not that interested in working with a quote unquote baby band any longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, and as you said, I mean, yeah, it's such a different music industry, so different now than it was, especially from the 80s, and where you had these producers like you and the and Randy Burns and Scott Burns and the whole Morris sound kind of thing, and that you don't hear about anything like that anymore. It's and as you said, a lot of it's like home production, and especially with the technology now, like man, anybody can record a really solid album in their basement, pretty easily.
Absolutely. If you can go like I record at home, and it's been a process. Like Chris Collier's mixing our album, and he gave me a huge compliment, which was, and of course, part of it was because of what I'd asked him about my miking. But I had bought some new mics, but I had placed them, and I spent a lot of time just getting the mic placement on my drums. And he said, "No, it's really good. I really like it. Don't change anything," which was a huge compliment for him. And but if you can get a professional sounding drum kit, then the rest of it, there's no reason that you really need a studio. It's great when you can, because a real studio can contribute so much to the sound and the vibe. But in terms of, like you said, you can just don't spend a lot of money, and you can get the gear and come out with something that's killer.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend 30 grand.
Yeah, it surprises me often when I hear a lot of new music and find out that it was all done in home studios in different places, and it wasn't recorded live as a band, which doesn't happen that often anymore, I would imagine. But still being able to capture that vibe, that live vibe. I mean, I think you guys did that really well with with the Brotherhood of Metal. I thought that sounded, like it
Mm.
sounds like all of it, and maybe some of it was, I'm not sure, but it sounds like it was all recorded together as a band.
Mhm.
That was live recording.
And I did an album with Adam Baum. He and I went in and we recorded an album of covers
Hmm.
a few years ago, and we did it live. They were all 1 and 2 takes, and it was fun. You forget sometimes that all the punch ins and all the keep the chorus, but let me redo the one chorus, and you can drop that in. There's none of that. It was all just live, and it was really fun, and it sounds great to me.
Yeah, yeah.
You forget that some of the greatest records you hear have little flaws in them, but how did they get that sound? I get that sound. I'm like, well, they get that sound because they put up some mics in a room, and the band counted the song off, and they played together until the end of the song, and they were in tune with each other and had a total vibe. And so the fact that there's not enough 5K on the snare drum, well, nobody cares.
Yeah,
It's a great vibe, and that, like Kashmir, you're listening to Kashmir, and you know it's just a killer version of
yeah,
what they played. But Led Zeppelin was classic for doing the live takes with John Bonham, and it wasn't all flawless, but and also if you tried to beat Detective John Bonham, it would be if you tried to take him and put him on the grid and line him up, you know, sound horrible.
yeah. It wouldn't be the same. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point. I think you look at like the Beatles, Let It Be, and the majority of that album is recorded live on a rooftop in the cold
Mm-hmm.
and the wind, and it's an
Yeah,
amazing classic album. But there's definitely some, they screwed up a few things here and there, and
we
but
did.
what they kept is it's amazing. It's incredible. Yeah,
And the push pull, like the Stones do. Like the Stones are not a band that does a lot of. Nobody re-triggered Charlie Watts drums in particular. Like they were so good or bad. There's a push and pull, but that's breathes, and it gives the band a vibe.
yeah,
And I read something about Jimmy Miller talking about sitting around waiting for them to do like it was honky tonk women or something, but he said it was like hours and agony and just nothing happening. It was just sucked. And he goes, but then all of a sudden it all gels and it's just magic. It's just incredible. From this band that sounds like they can't play anything and they're horrible, suddenly no one else in the world could create that sound. And it's true, like musicians playing in a room together, totally focused on the song and each other's performances and so on. There's a magic that comes from that, and you can get it. You can get pretty close in the studio and pretty much a reasonable facsimile of just dialing in your parts, but it's still not the same. I think in terms of that vibe. Like if Led Zeppelin were to record like that, it would be a whole different Led Zeppelin.
yeah. I agree. That's a good point. Um, well, Carl, this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor chatting with you today. For those listening, those watching, if you look in the description below, there are links to the Rods Facebook page and website, as well as Canedy. If you don't own the latest albums from both of these bands, you need to go out right now and buy the live album, the Rods live at Rose Hall, and the Canedy Warrior album. Those need to be in your collection. You will not be sorry. Just amazing, perfect albums in my opinion, and very much looking forward to the new the Rods album coming out hopefully this coming year, I'm guessing. So
I'm
we'll
hoping
wait.
the first quarter,
Oh,
first in
excellent.
24. Yeah, I'm hoping January 24.
Excellent. Yeah. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Carl, thank you so very, very much. This has been an absolute, this made my day. This has been great chatting with you.
Well, thank you so much because great questions. I really enjoyed this interview and I appreciate it. And also, you can check out Canedy the Rods, which is our YouTube page,
Oh,
Canedy
yeah.
the Rods, and that's tons of stuff, a lot of content, and that's probably the first place you'll actually be able to see or hear a song from the new album. So
Oh,
check that out
excellent.
as well.
Very, very
And
cool.
and any gigs, come and say hi. Like I always love meeting people and we're all very friendly. No one will hold their hand out and ask for money if you want to come and say hi.
Nice.
So, if you're at a gig, come and say hi.
Definitely. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be able to see you guys live in the not too distant future. I would love to see the rods. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.